Hello, children. How are you all? Hope that all of you are fine. Today, we shall begin with our English session with the chapter The Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood, Part 1, Session 2. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. But before we proceed further with our session, let's have a brief recap of whatever we had learned in the previous section. In the previous section, we had seen that as the lesson opens, we are being introduced with two characters, that is the author and the protagonist, where the author, she is asking the question to Sahib that what he is doing. And Sahib replies that because he has nothing else to do, he is doing this job. Further, we are being informed about the background of Sahib, that he and his family, they have migrated from Bangladesh, Dhaka, in order to earn their livelihood over here in India. Then the author, she is suggesting him to go to the school, and the protagonist, he is telling that there is no school in his neighborhood. When he is going to find one, he will surely go. To that, the author, jokingly, she makes the remark that if she opened a school, would he attend it? Sahib gives a positive response to it. And few days later, again he comes to the writer in order to ask whether her school was ready or not. To that, the writer, she gets a bit embarrassed, and she concludes by saying that promises that were being made to the people like Sahib, they reside in every corner of their life and the world. Then we are being introduced with the harsh reality of the slum life, where most of the children, we will be able to see, they will be roaming around barefooted. Sahib and his friends are also friends also belong to that community, where most of them, they are roaming around in the street with no footwears. Now when one of the child goes on saying to the author that it has become a tradition in the slum area to move barefooted like that, it sounds to the author more of an excuse to display the unending state of poverty that these children are forced to live with. Now, up till here we had covered in the earlier session. Now we shall begin reading and understanding the chapter line wise. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town, and the temple, which was now drowned in the air of desolation. Now here, the author, she is talking about one of the story she is reminded of. She is telling that once upon a time she encountered a man from Udupi And when he was young, he was supposed to go to the school which was near an old temple. His father, he must be priest, but he must be too poor to afford to get the pair of shoes. So he would stop over there at the temple in order to pray to God to have him a pair of shoes. 30 years later, again the writer, she is visiting the same town. She is going to the same temple, which was now in the utter miserable state. Here desolation means a miserable state or a state of sadness. So that particular temple, it was in a miserable state. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many other, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remained shoeless. Now here, again when she is visiting the temple 30 years later, she is again going to the backyard where now she is finding that the new priest is living over there, and there were red and white plastic chairs put over there in his veranda, and he could see a young boy dressed in a grey school uniform. He was also wearing socks and shoes. He arrived panting. Panting means what? It is a physical condition of breathing heavily. It's called panting. And threw his that boy, he threw his bag on a bed. Now looking at that boy, again the writer, she wondered, okay, the prayers that were being made by the another boy to the goddess, now finally the children of the priest, they were not deprived of the pair of the shoes. Now the goddess, she had granted his prayer, and the young boys like him were wearing the shoes. But again she was being reminded of the rag pickers in her neighborhood, like Sahib Alam and his friends, who were now also shoeless, living the same old, bad, and a life like scavengers. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Semapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it, metaphorically. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Now these rag pickers whom she was acquainted with, she was seeing them every day. They belong to Semapuri, that was located at Delhi, although it was miles away from the city, but then too it was the area belonging to Delhi. And these people who were living over here, they were squatters. Squatters means what? The refugees, or the people, those who were dumped from their places. They had come from Bangladesh in the year 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Semapuri was then a wilderness. Wilderness means jungle. It still is, but it is no longer empty. In structure of mud, with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, lived 10,000 rag pickers. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters list and enables them to buy grain. Food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain, says a group of women in tattered saris when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Now the writer, she is further discussing that Sahib and his family, they were among the people, those who were living in that slum area of Simapuri. Although it was a sort of a jungle, but it is no longer empty. Whole of the area, it is full of more than 10,000 rag pickers family, and this particular area is devoid of sewage, means what, any waste disposal. They are not having the lavatories, they are not having proper drainage system, and they are living in a utter miserable state over there. And they have been living over there for more than 30 years without any identity or the permits, but they were having the ration cards that were enabling them to vote and buy the grains. And what they think is that food is more important for them than to have any sort of identity. And the females over there, when she is asking them the question that why these people, they have left their place, then the group of females over there, they are giving the answer to the writer that if at the end of the day their family, they were getting enough food for the survival of their family, that was much more, that made them much more comfortable and contented than living in the fields where they were devoid of getting any sort of a food. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. Children grew up in them, becoming partners in survival, and survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. It is their daily bread, a roof over their head, even if it is a leaking roof, but for a child, it is even more. Now obviously, because it was a matter of their survival, so what mattered to them more was their survival and their livelihood. So these people, they further told the writer that wherever these people, they used to find the food, they used to make their transitory homes over there, they used to build their hutments over there, and their children also, they were being brought up, they were being born and brought up in such condition only, accepting the state of life that was being offered to them by the society or by the God. And they were very much acquainted, they were very much aware of the fact that their livelihood and future will be sustained only by doing the job of rag picking. And through these many years, they have found this garbage to be the gold only. Why it is being referred to as gold? Because it was the source of livelihood for them, it was a source of having a roof over their head, and it was more of a matter of survival for them. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fence gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it, standing behind the fence. I go I go inside when no one is around, he admits. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says in the manner of an explanation. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. Now, one morning, when the writer she is out, she is observing Sahib standing by the fence of a clubhouse which is situated near her neighborhood. He is watching two men dressed in white colored uniform playing tennis. So he is admitting to the author that he is liking the game, and he also admits that the gatekeeper sometimes he lets him go inside in order to play on the swing. Sahib also is wearing tennis shoes that are looking very strange on his discolored faded shirt and shorts. And he gives the explanation to the writer saying that someone had given them to him. But in fact, those shoes, they appeared to be discarded by some rich boy who must have refused to wear them because one of the shoe it was having a hole in it. But for the poor boy like Sahib, it was better to wear the shoes with the hole than to walk barefooted like him. And again, when the writer concludes the paragraph, she is writing a statement over there, but the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. Why she is referring to such a statement? The game, obviously, as far as this game was concerned on the mental level, it was something out of the way for the child like Sahib-e-Alam. But here her intention was also to make it clear that it was next to impossible for a child like Sahib to learn the game like tennis and to play a game like tennis that was being played by rich people or the so-called aristocratic class of the society. We shall again proceed further reading the text and understanding it. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. Now the next morning, when she happens to meet Sahib, then he sees him working on a milk booth and he was holding a steel canister. Canister means that the metal vessel in which the tea or the coffee it is being filled. So he said to the author that he was working on that tea stall and he was being paid 800 rupees a month and the meals for 2 times. Then the author goes on asking him whether he likes the job or not. But at that time, his face appears to be losing the carefree look that it used to hold when he was doing the job of rag picking. The steel canister seems to be much heavier than the plastic bag that he used to carry on his shoulders. Obviously, when he was doing the job of rag picking at that time, he was free, and he was doing that particular job like a child, that particular work like a child used to do. Because previously also the writer, she has uttered, she has mentioned in the book, in the chapter itself, okay, for the children it was wrapped in wonders. At that particular time he was not searching for, or he was not searching, hunting, or doing that particular job for his livelihood, but because he was seeing some sort of wonder in it, that's why he was doing that particular job of rag picking. But now for a child like Sahib, when he has started working in a tea stall, then obviously he was a laborer over there, and he was being paid for the work that he was doing. So he was being mastered, he was a slave, and he was having the master to rule over him. So the name that Sahib Alam being given to him somewhere stands contradictory to the job that he is doing right now. That's why the writer, she ends up telling that Sahib is no longer his own master, because previously he was doing the job of rag picking on his own will and wish, but now he is doing the job at a tea stall for which he is being paid, and he has to obey the orders that are being delivered by the master. Now hope that you have understood the chapter very well. Here the part 1 of the chapter Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood gets over. And before we end our session, let's have a look at a brief animation of the chapter that will make you understand the text more easily and more quickly. See you class in the next session. Till then, goodbye and take care.